Good afternoon. First, may I say that we hope to have these meetings every Wednesday night at 8 and Sunday afternoon at 2, right up here in this lounge, at least for the next couple of months. And then there will be a closed class in June. After that, I'm due for classwork in Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, and London. This work that we will do here is to perhaps correct some of the work that has been done here in past years. At least I hope that out of this a correction will come. The infinite way is a way of life, but it is not a way that can be accomplished through reading or hearing. It can only be accomplished by using the readings, the writings, the hearings as a means toward another end, and that other end is practicing the message until it becomes a way of life within one. That will unfold as we go along. To many, it has not been clear that the Word must be practiced before it can be lived. In other words, that it has to become an accepted part of our consciousness before it can be a demonstrated thing in our experience. Now, the point of departure from the usual process where we just read something that benefits us or hears something that benefits us, the point of departure is this: that if you knew this whole message word for word through every one of the writings, it still would have but very little effect upon you or upon your life. In this work, we come to a place of transition where the message leaves the mind and enters the heart. In other words, where you no longer merely know it with the mind or know it intellectually, but where it becomes a living thing within one's being. To illustrate that, I may make use of the word God. That's a very familiar word. Everybody in the world knows that word, God. But there are very few people in the world who know God. Always, God remains a word or a term. God remains something in the realm of a word out there, a power out there, a being out there. But God itself does not become a living reality except to those few people who in literature are understood by their title of mystics. A mystic is a person who who has achieved actual acquaintanceship with God, who actually knows God, who has the actual feel of God's presence, of God's power. There aren't too many of those in the world. If there were just a few more, perhaps, as we're told in Scripture, 10 righteous men in a city might save the city, and probably if there were 10 people on earth at any one time who actually knew God, they might be enough to save the world. Well, perhaps there are 10 or a dozen or even 10 dozen throughout the world who have known God as a living reality. Now, in this work, to know the message as so many words, statements of truth, passages, theories, is one thing. But it is an entirely different thing when the Word takes root in our consciousness and comes forth as spiritual fruitage. We're told that the fruits of the Spirit are joy, peace, harmony, well-being, gentleness, humility, so forth. And it's really true that once the Spirit has been either touched or has touched one, then the fruitage comes forth in the form of good, harmonies, health, wholeness, completeness, perfection. Now, it has been the aim of my lecture work and class work from the beginning to bring this message to those who are interested, not so much from the standpoint of literature, not from the standpoint of oratory or good delivery or a good lecture, but from the standpoint of a message of specific truths that can be taken into consciousness and practiced first and then lived. And so, in these weeks to come, I'm in hopes that more of the students will take the message, practice it, live it, so that we can come nearer and nearer, or have more of the students come into an actual awareness, an actual consciousness of living in the Spirit. Now, in ordinary religious work, the end and object is to attain some measure of better humanhood. That is why we have things like the 10 Commandments. And if you honor your mother and father, and if you don't steal, and if you don't commit adultery, and if you don't covet or envy, you are attaining a measure of very excellent humanhood, which is a fine thing to attain. But it is not the work of the infinite way to go into that phase of life at all. In the infinite way, the object is to attain a measure of that mind that was in Christ Jesus. And then let it do with us what it will. The result is this, then. You don't have to be a good human. And you don't have to concern yourself with honoring your father and mother. You don't have to concern yourself with being honest or not committing adultery. You lose all the power. You lose all the ability to have those things even enter thought. They don't even enter consciousness. They're no part of life. In other words, there's no good humanhood because there's no bad humanhood because there's no humanhood. The object of this work is to reach that consciousness where Paul reveals, I live, yet not I. Christ liveth my life. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. In other words, the activity of the Spirit becomes alive in one, and then it takes over, and then you are no longer good, and you are no longer bad, you are no longer sick, but neither are you well. You are at a stage that transcends the pairs of opposites. You are at the stage where immortality is understood, demonstrated, lived. Toward this end, we will have not only this work, as we are having it here, the writings, the recordings, but to this has been added, in the last couple of months, a monthly letter. Anyone who wishes that letter mailed to them every month need only express their desire for it by writing their name and address on a piece of paper or card and putting the word letter there, and it will be mailed to them. It is not offered for a subscription price. It is available to you with or without price, and if with a price, any price that you yourself may determine. The object of it is primarily to be another means of study and practice and of holding us together in communion with each other, so that, well, last month, for instance, 1,200 copies of it went to 12 countries. This month there will be something over 1,300 copies going out to 12 countries. And you can imagine that as 1,200 people are reading and studying that really they're not 1,200 people, they are all one consciousness. They're all in the one law, the one consciousness, the one activity. And that makes the two or more that are gathered together in my name, because there is nothing selfish or personal about this study. When one studies it, they soon find that the major benefit is not theirs, but the world at large. When light comes to an individual, it isn't for their own sake, it is for the world. As we come to any spiritual study or any spiritual approach to life, probably we have this in common, that we are seeking some good for ourselves. We may be seeking a healing, physical, mental, moral, financial, or we may be seeking just peace of mind. But whatever it is we are seeking, as a rule, we are seeking it for ourselves. And what very quickly develops is that as the Spirit touches one, you find that its benefit isn't for oneself, but for the world. That the self that is doing the studying and practicing soon has no problems, has no needs, has no requirements. Whatever little things may be necessary in the way of health and supply have a way of taking care of themselves, and one finds themselves completely free to be a light to the rest of the world, greater or lesser, depending on the light that unfolds, because it is never of our choosing. The light is God itself. This work, like that of the letters, this work of the Wednesday night and Sunday afternoon work, will be supported entirely by voluntary gifts. There will be some kind of a receptacle there. And there will be no further charge on this than one's own desire at any given moment. So there's really no reason why we can't take advantage of every moment, of every opportunity, if we're led in this way, to find a measure of fulfillment. And on that point, let me say this. Just as you yourself are not urged to come here, you are invited, and certainly lovingly, but not urged, so must you remember with those to whom you speak, do not urge this upon anyone. You may invite anyone that you think would be receptive. You may invite them, and they certainly will be made welcome, but do not urge them, because this is not a work that anyone can benefit by except to the extent of their own willingness to be benefited. You cannot urge it upon anyone. You cannot force it upon anyone, because it is the act of the Spirit, and those who are not ready for the act of the Spirit will do better to find another activity or another place for their search. And so, as in all of our work, we're so happy to present it to those willing. If you notice in the newspaper, it is in no wise an ad. It merely states that Joel Goldsmith will speak on the infinite way. And the only ones who know who Joel Goldsmith is or what the infinite way is are those who already know. And so it is not meant to bring anyone here, merely to make those who already know acquainted with the fact of the place and the time of our meeting. And so it is. Present the subject of the infinite way wherever you will, but do it always in the sense of leaving everyone free to accept or to reject. Now, on Wednesday night, we had the subject of the beginning of meditation. The beginning of meditation. And the purpose was this. There is a way to approach the subject of God. There is a way to approach the acquaintance with God. But there is only one way, and that way is through the within. In other words, the kingdom of God is within you, and you're never going to find God any other place or any other way than within you. And so all attempts to reach God in the external world or through external means have pretty well failed. But those who have achieved any manner of success in that work have done it through making the contact right where it has been told it would be made, within you. Now, that is the way. The way is within you. How are you going to get within you to make this contact? And so far, in the entire history of the world, only one way has been discovered, and that way is the way of meditation or communion, introspection, cogitation, anything that will enable you to close your eyes and ears to the outside world and get within your own being. It is very, very difficult. The way is straight and narrow, and few there be that enter. It is very difficult. Those looking for an easy way will not find the way of meditation to be an easy way. It takes time, it takes practice, and the rewards are great, because the reward is peace of mind, peace of soul, health, harmony, joy, freedom. Those are the things that come when one has contacted God. Oh, it doesn't mean that you will always find the peace with everyone around you, because if they do not find their peace, they can continue to be in unrest. But you develop a place within your own being that no one outside can penetrate. And therein lies your freedom, not in leaving the world, not necessarily in leaving your family, but in finding that insulated place within your own being in which you have your freedom and are not disturbed by the goings and comings of the outer world. On Wednesday night, we took the beginning of meditation. And we took it in this way. By having some statement of truth with which to live morning, noon, and night, and making that truth a part of our consciousness until the truth itself took over and lived our life. Now here is Scripture. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. The important word there is the word stayed. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Lean not unto thine own understanding. Acknowledge him in all thy ways. You see the important phrase in there. Acknowledge him in all thy ways. He will give thee rest. Or the 91st Psalm, first verse. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. None of the evils will come nigh their dwelling place. None of the evils described in the rest of the 91st Psalm will come nigh the dwelling place of whom? That individual who dwells, who lives in the secret place of the Most High, who lives and moves and has his being in God. And of course the question comes, how do you do that? There are probably many ways, but our way, the way I have discovered and the way that is taught in the Infinite Way, is this. In the book, The Infinite Way, on pages 97 to 103, you will find an outline, not a formula, but an outline of a daily practice, beginning with waking in the morning and going through until bedtime at night, for a way of continuously reminding oneself of this presence of God, this power of God, this function of God in one's life. And now today we are going to take another specific way. We had one specific way on Wednesday night. Today we will take another. And for our theme today, I'm going to give you this. There is only one power. There is no power of evil. There is no power of sin. There is no power of disease. There is no power of lack or limitation. There is only one power. You have to agree with me on this, whether you can see it or not, because you have already, even before the Infinite Way, accepted the teaching of the Master. You call yourselves Christians. And because of that, you have to accept this fact that God is infinite, that God is eternal, that God is omnipotent, that God is omniscient, God is omnipresent. In other words, you have to accept, even if you do it only with the mind, that God is the only power. God made all that was made. Anything that God did not make was not made. And so we have God as the one power, God as the only power. Now, because we are intelligent people, we have the right to say, yes, with my mind I have accepted that, but also with my mind I must say this, that I don't see evidences of it. There is a great power of disease in the world. There is a great power of wars and atomic bombs in the world. There is a great power of sin. Very often there is even a great power of depressions and lacks and unemployments in the world. This world seems to be made up of powers of infection, powers of contagion, powers of hereditary diseases, powers of evil in many ways. And that is true. As long as we are dealing with the human world in a human way, there will be two powers, the power of good and the power of evil, and the power of evil will, of course, be the dominant power, because the power of good only comes around once in a while, and sometimes not until after we're dead. That is the human picture. There's more of disease in the world than there is of health. People spend more of their time sick than they do well. And so far as the majority of the world is concerned, they spend most of the time in lack, more of the time in lack than in abundance, in spite of the fact that we have a Christian teaching, not only Christian, it goes further back than that, of God as one power. Now let us assume for a moment that so far as the world is concerned, there are these two powers, good and evil. Whereas spiritually we understand that the one power alone is power. Now the point is that we are to bring out in our individual experiences a state of being that is ruled by one power and not two. As human beings, we are going to be ruled by two powers. Always, as human beings, we are going to have laws of sin, or laws of sickness, or laws of lack, or laws of limitation. There will always be the two powers as long as there is a human consciousness in the world, because the human consciousness is itself a divided household, divided into the two parts, good and evil. Now, to transcend this, to come into a state of existence where these opposites do not operate, where you find only one power, that is something that is brought about by you individually in your experience. You can be taught how to do it, but no one can do it for you. That becomes an activity of your own consciousness. And on this point, still going back to the word God, let me tell you this. There is a God. And this God is not going to concern itself with you. You must concern yourself with God. God must become an activity within your consciousness, or you go through life as humankind is, with its ups and downs. To bring yourself separate and apart from that, you must do it as an activity of truth in your consciousness. You must do it. Now here is one of the ways. Start with the theme that God is one. God is one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. God is one. Thou shalt have no other gods, no other powers, no other laws, but one. As you go about your life during the day, you are greeted either in the newspaper or on the radio with some news of a distressing nature about international affairs. And here is where you begin the practice of truth. It becomes necessary as you read or hear this news to remind yourself that since God is one and God is the only power operating in this universe is the power of good. Now, we know about these other appearances. We know about the claim that dictators have powers, or bad senators or congressmen have power, or bad this or that has power. We know all about that. Ours is a holding to a spiritual truth, not the appearance as it is in the news. And the spiritual truth is God alone is power. Now, you bring this into your experience by not acknowledging anything but God in all your ways. And so in that instance you will acknowledge God is the only power operating in this universe. The next thing, your attention is brought to some form of sickness, whether of your own or another's, makes no difference. The responsibility rests with you. The moment you become conscious of illness, whether it's your own or another's, to again bring to light the realization God, Spirit, is the only power and the only law. God is the only law. There cannot then be a law of disease. Well, as a matter of fact, we know there's no law of disease, because the law of disease, it couldn't be violated, no one ever get well. Anything that's supported by a law can't be changed. You can't change 2 times 2 being 4. You can't change the law of like begetting like. You can't change the law of day following night. You cannot change any law. And so if there were a law of disease, the disease would have to be permanent. Could never be overcome. So there is no law of disease. There are laws of disease, according to our human belief, which we've accepted, just as there are laws of astrology. There are those who will say to you, don't be afraid of astrology, it's not a law. Of course it isn't a law. But as long as there is a universal acceptance of astrology, you will find the effects of astrology taking place in your experience. Now, it isn't a law. The proof of that is that the greatest astrologer that ever lived told her students that at all times to have at least 1 or 2 Christian Science practitioners on her staff, so that if she found anything evil in the life of her clients, she could have the Christian Science practitioners nullify that law. Because it isn't a law. There's no such thing as a law. The only law there is the law that emanates from God. The reason is that God itself is law. And God being infinite, law is infinite. God being good, law is good. So you can have no law of disease, nor can you have a law of accident. You can come under the claim of accident. You can accept a law of accident in your thought, but actually it can only exist as a law as long as you leave it in the realm of your human acceptance. When you adopt for yourself God as one, you will have only one law, and that law will be the law of God, and it will be the law of good, and it will be omni-active and omnipresent in your experience. But no one can do this for you. No one can do this for you. This you must do for yourself. Yes, in a particular case of illness or accident or unemployment, a practitioner can be a temporary help. A practitioner can lift you over an immediate problem or 2 or 3, but ultimately you must take over on your responsibility. Otherwise, those who can afford it could hire practitioners by the 10-year period and say, now you just keep me well and keep me out of accidents and keep me prosperous. It never has been successfully done, and it can't be. A practitioner is a temporary relationship in your experience, like a teacher is. A teacher reveals the laws, whether it's a teacher of some human subject or the teacher of a spiritual subject. they reveal these laws, then you take over, accept them in your consciousness, practice them until they take over, and then you are free of practitioners or teachers, except again as some temporary measure at some particular time. Now, we have accepted as our theme today, God is one. God is the only power. God is the only law. God is the only presence. God is the only substance. So throughout your day, you will also be tempted to believe that there is material substance, that there is substance that can be too big, too little, too fresh, too decayed, changing substance. And there it will be necessary to accept your principle, bring it to life again. God is one. If there is any substance in the world, then God is that substance. And that substance must be infinite, harmonious, spiritual, eternal, immortal. Again, in your day you will be faced with the temptation of death. It makes no difference whether you're being told about the death of a friend or relative or someone in a volcano country or plague country or a country devoid of food. Always, there isn't a day goes by that the presence of death isn't consciously brought to your awareness. Now, just because it isn't you who are in danger of dying today, do not neglect this opportunity. Do not put it aside as if, well, that doesn't interest me at the present moment. Indeed, it does interest you. It interests you at any moment that it is presented to you, because either you will let it come into your consciousness or you will rule it out. And if you rule it out now, you may never have to meet it again. Now, at the merest suggestion of the danger of death or the presence of death, bring your theme to bear. God is one. One what? Well, you know God is life. Oh, God is life. Then life is eternal. Then life is immortal. Then life is infinite, never beginning and never ending, since life is God. God is life. And there is only one God, therefore there is only one life. Now you see, as you persist in this, throughout the day, the night, the week, the month, gradually you get to a point as you would if you took up driving an automobile today and you had to watch your left foot, your right foot, and your left hand and your right hand. For a week you might have to watch those, but at the end of a month you would be driving a car without ever thinking of your hands or feet. And so it is with this, that at the end of a month you would find that you didn't have to again consciously think about God as one or God as life. You wouldn't have to think of that at all, because it would be so much a part of your consciousness that the moment the opposite touched you, it would be almost as if you saw a line going down that way, erasing it without any conscious effort on your part. Now, you have God as life. You have God as soul, sinlessness, purity. You have God as spirit, the substance of the body and of the organs and functions of the body. You have God as law. You have God as mind. Why, over and over and over, you are meeting the claims of insanity and of all the different things that go up to the degree of insanity. Some are just mild forms and some are violent forms, but there isn't a day that you're not being presented with some form of insanity in this world. And there it becomes necessary to know that God is intelligence. God is the source of all intelligence. God is the source of the one mind, the one intelligence, the one wisdom. And so you meet these claims and overcome them. You see why I say that no one can do this for you. This is a practice that takes place within you until such time as it becomes so embedded in you, the word one, that you never accept these appearances as they come to your consciousness. One. God is the only law. There is no law then binding us to any evil condition, but it becomes necessary because God is truth. And truth, omnipresent in your consciousness, is the law of elimination to every form of discord. To every form of discord in your experience. God is that. Now, lean not unto thine own understanding. Acknowledge him in all thy ways. In the booklet, Love and Gratitude, you will find the deepest principle that I have come across in my 24 years of this work. It may be that I will find one some other time that is deeper, but up to this time I can tell you that the deepest principle I have discovered in all my work is that one that is the subject and the theme of the booklet, Love and Gratitude. And the theme is this: since God is love, I can only receive love from God. I can receive it through people, but not from people. I can receive love only from God. And no one can receive love from me, only through me. Any love that anyone finds in me, any truth anyone finds, any service anyone finds, any benevolence anyone finds, is not from me. It is from God coming through me. And so as we adopt this principle into our experience and stop looking for love on this human plane, or cooperation, or gratitude, and expect it only from God, and that's a matter of training. Please believe me, it's the most difficult thing to turn away from our friends and relatives and say, I no longer expect love from you, I expect mine from God. But it is exactly the same thing as saying, I do not expect my supply from man whose breath is in his nostril. I expect it from God. If there wasn't a human being on earth, I would expect my supply. I would expect my 3 meals a day. If there wasn't a human being on earth, I would expect that, because I expect it from God. And though there are 4 billion people on earth, I do not look to person for my supply. I look to God. It still comes through people, but it comes from God, and it isn't up to me to say who the person is through whom it should come, or when, or why, or in what amount. My concern is to live with this principle of one. Love is God. God is love. Well, the same way, God is life. Now, I don't expect my life from any man, woman, or child. I expect my life only from God. But then love is just as much of God as life is. Therefore, I must expect my love of God, my supply of God, my health of God, my harmony of God. My expectation is from God. My expectation is of God. Now, we look for justice. We look for cooperation. We look for all of these things on the human plane, and what do we meet with? Disappointment, failure. The very ones that we look to for our good are the ones who very often fail us. Why? Because we have sought our good in man whose breath is in his nostril, and we are definitely told, why should we? Wherein is he to be accounted of? We are told in the New Testament, leave mother, leave father, sister, brother, not desert them, but leave off our dependence upon them. Let us keep our dependence in and of God. We have this theme again in another way in leave your nets. Leave your nets. Nets can be very entangling influences. Don't get entangled in nets. Leave your nets. Leave your human dependency and place your entire reliance on God as one. Now, to practice this day in, day out, hour in, hour out, holding to God as the law of our being, God as the source of our good, God as the activity of our day, I tell you truthfully that a month, 2 months of this changes one's entire experience. Because in that month or two, it is true, all of this is up in the realm of the mind. But by constant practice, it leaves the realm of the mind and comes down into the heart, into the awareness, into the consciousness, and then it takes over and begins to live our experience. We do not throw the mind out the window in this work, but we use the mind in its proper place. The mind is an avenue of awareness. It is not a creative faculty. No one can create anything with the mind. Inventors, composers, artists, writers, poets, never in their lives invented anything. They discovered them. Through the activity of the mind, they became aware of melodies, or they became aware of natural laws, or they became aware of influences, or they became aware of beauty in one form. They never created it. They became aware of it. The creative faculty is way down deep in the soul. And that soul isn't a personal possession, it's God. It is God, the soul of us, that really is the creative principle of existence. Through our mind, we become aware of it. Now, with my mind, I have become aware of these deeper truths and laws of God. And the mind is one of the avenues through which it is being revealed. But believe me, if it were only in the mind, it would not appear outwardly as healing power. It would not appear outwardly as forgiving power or regenerating power. Never, never, never. It must get way down into the soul. When it is there, then we are told, if so be, the Spirit of God dwell in you, then are you become the sons of God. Then do you have power to become the sons of God. And as sons of God, you have the power to heal, to forgive, to raise, to regenerate, to bring about supply, to bring about employment. You have it within your power to lift up humanity into a more harmonious state of existence. You haven't that ability with anything you learn with the mind. Until after it has been learned with the mind, it becomes absorbed, reflected into the soul. Then out of the soul comes this power of spirit, gentleness, humility, long-suffering, patience, and all of the things that Paul gave us. Now, Paul also gave us that great wisdom. The natural man receiveth not the things of God. That natural man is the reasoning faculty. That natural man is the power of the mind to think and to reason things out. And that man does not receive the things of God. The things of God are received by the Spirit of God, the consciousness of God, the soul, which is a deeper layer of life than the mind. Now use the mind, and let the mind be useful in your activity as an avenue of awareness. But remember, and you only need 1 month to prove what I say, take any of this in your mind, more especially this lesson of today of God as one power, one law, one substance, one cause. The moment you see anything attributed to any other cause, get right back with, no, God is the only cause. God is the only cause. Watch at the end of 1 month what transpires in your experience as you understand God as the one power. Now, God as one is, without question, the highest teaching revealed to the world by the Master, Christ Jesus. It is in his teaching that you will find, not by might nor by power, it is in his teaching that you will find, agree with thine adversary, resist not evil. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. It is in the Master's teaching that you are taught the power of renunciation, that is, the renunciation of human powers. Why? Because the power of the Spirit is the one power, the all power, the only power. And as you learn to give up the use of these human powers, this divine power takes over and becomes a living presence that goes before you to make the crooked places straight. It becomes a living influence in your life that meets your every need before you know that you have need of it. It is his good pleasure to give you the kingdom. He knoweth your need before you do. There's no use of even praying to God for anything, since whatever it is that is normal, natural, right in your experience, God knows before you do. And you learn not even to use the power of prayer. You learn, the power of prayer becomes something entirely different than anything you've ever known. Prayer becomes eventually just a communing with God. Prayer becomes, yes. If you've ever been away from your mother for a long time and then went home for a visit, you'll know what prayer is. When you went home for this visit with your mother, it wasn't to get something. It was just to be in her presence. Well, that's what prayer is. It's being in the presence of God, not for some reason, not to get something. It's as horrible to go to God for something as it is to go to your mother for it. Really, truly, it's sinful to go to God for anything, because it's really believing that God doesn't know your need, and probably God is withholding it. But to go to God in true prayer is really to go only for the purpose of visitation, of communion, of basking in the presence. That is the purpose of prayer. The moment you let something come into your prayer in the nature of a God I want, or God I need, or God I would like, you have nullified the power of true prayer in your experience. Go to God as you go to your mother, just to feel her arms around you, just to feel yourself leaning up against her bosom, just to feel yourself smiling in her presence. Do that with God. Do that with God. Go to God in prayer, but let that prayer be just a thank you, Father, just to be here. That's all. Just to be here. I have no desires. I have no needs. I have no wishes. Just to be here. That you will find will be your true prayer, your communion, your conscious union, your at oneness. And that form of prayer, that is worshiping the Father in spirit and in truth, in love, seeking nothing of the Father, wanting nothing of the Father, just to be in the divine presence, to be in the divine spirit, to be enfolded in those everlasting and ever-loving arms. That is the real prayer, and that's what comes to you within a month or two after you start to realize God as one presence, God as one power, and stop fearing these other things. Stop hating error, and stop fearing error, and stop loving error too. We not only hate error, we fear error, and some forms of it we love. We have to learn not to hate error, not to fear it, and certainly not to love it. And then, through the acknowledgement of God as one, that comes about. There's no other way. I have heard people say, oh, you must get rid of this fear. I wish you could tell me how. If there's anything we're fearing, there isn't any way to get rid of that fear or overcome it until something comes along to show us that that which we were fearing has no power. Then the fear of it is gone. Only when we've learned that it has no power. How are we to learn that it has no power? Well, when we learn that which has power, we will learn that nothing else but that has power. And that which has power, that which is power, is God. God alone is power. God is one. One power, one life, one love, one spirit, one cause, one being, one source. Nothing comes into our experience unless it comes from God. And the next time that something that you call evil comes into your experience, try this on it. Just turn and say, that too came from God. And see what happens. No matter what comes into your experience, no matter how erroneous the world considers it, turn on it immediately and say, you too have come from God. And watch the transition that takes place in it. The moment you acknowledge no source, no cause, no power, no presence, no being but God. And then as rapidly as possible, learn these higher aspects of prayer. Prayer in which you go to God for nothing but companionship. In which you go to God for nothing but the assurance of this divine presence. Let us meditate for a few minutes. I would like to call your attention to something very important in the world, and you will become more aware of it within the next year or two. This subject of spiritual living and spiritual healing is coming to the attention of the world probably 10, 20, 30 times faster than has ever been the case before this past year. In other words, in this past year, it is almost as if we had entered some kind of a new era, and all of a sudden, in the strangest places in the world, you are finding this to be a subject of deep interest. And the latest experience of the kind is this, that there has been a conference has been called of the Protestant churches of England. And the archbishops of Canterbury have called this, and they have invited the 6 outstanding spiritual healers of England to attend this conference and enlighten them on the subject of spiritual healing, so that they can prepare a writing for their ministers and their congregations to give them more light on the subject of spiritual healing. The reason has been that all over England this past year, hundreds of Protestant churches have been holding spiritual healing meetings with these 6 men who have developed some degree of, some more, some less, of knack or understanding of the healing principle. Well, in the same way, we over here are getting calls not only from some churches, but from materia medica sources and other sources that indicate that the same thing is about to break loose over here. And the world is coming rapidly to that place where the interest will be in this spiritual way and the spiritual thing. Now, I've been telling our classes in New York, Washington, the state of Washington, Oregon, Washington, D.C., the time has come for our more serious students to prepare themselves to do some of this healing work and some of this healing teaching, because it isn't difficult. It should take about 3 years for a student to be prepared to go out and do some healing work and some teaching work. 3 years should do it. But it can't be done until the first day has begun, and that first day begins with a day like this, in which we take one principle, put it into practice, and then follow it with these others until and usually it's about 3 years, the student says, oh, you mean this, and this is what you told them 3 years ago. Yes, it has passed from the mental to the deeper awareness and become a living thing by then. And so really and truly, please remember, we, of course, have no organization, so we're not interested in a personal way whether there are healers or not. But the world is ready for healers. The world is ready for those capable of teaching a spiritual way of life. In case you want a quick definition of spiritual way of life, it is this: a life that has become dependent on the invisible rather than on the visible sources and resources and powers of existence.